Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fireside chat that has morphed into hopefully you're by a fire pit. This is a fire pit or patio chat for you, and we have been doing these kinds of chats since March or April. And the idea is really for leaders at Derryfield to share what we know and understand about reopening as we develop and work on our reopening plan. And we're going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions, you could put those in the chat feature on this webinar. And at the end, we'll get to those questions and we will answer the questions that we can answer here. And we will take the other questions, which are so helpful for our reopening team in shaping our work and the things we think about for the next week. So questions that aren't answered, just as valuable. Thank you so much for sending those. And also thank you for emails that you send after chats where you think of other questions. And also the many encouraging emails have been just so uplifting for our team. So thank you so much. And also a reminder, you don't need to take notes on what you hear here because you can go to www.derryfield.org, and on that landing page, you'll see a reopening option, and you can pop that and see a compendium of all the kind of information and decisions that we've made so far. You can also, I think, pretty easily access past fireside chats if you'd like to see those as well. So tonight, I'm Mary Halpin Carter, head of school, in case you're new to Derryfield, and I'm here tonight with Reina Stimpson, who's our Dean of Students, and with Gill.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Reina, and also with Jill Roberts, who's our Director of Safety and Assistant Dean of Students.
Hello.
Hi, Jill.
Good evening, everyone. Happy summer evening.
Yeah.
At the last fire pit chat, we talked about mask policy and the return to school and the daily schedule. Tonight, we're going to talk about health protocols, transportation protocols, consistency in our policies, and at the very end, we'll talk about sports schedules and sports in general. So I just want to kind of, just remind everyone that Derryfield is aiming high, one of our school's core values, when it comes to reopening. And we really hope to have similar best practices that are similar to those that have been used in Denmark, and not those that have been used in the state of Georgia in the United States, for example. We want to be a school that opens and stays open safely. And to that end, back in April, we hired consultants from Fusion Cell, and they are experts in epidemiology and public health, and they manage public health incidents or their experiences in managing public health incidents for the military around the world. And so we use the consultants, but we also organized a team of leaders at Derryfield that have worked on every aspect of school life: academics, athletics, community connection, student life, space use, transportation, communications, and more. And we've been meeting 2 times a week at minimum as a huge group, and then almost every day as in small groups. And we have been working at also having consistent meetings with our board of trustees, student leadership, faculty and staff, and our parent groups. And so we are all working in concert together, and that helps to assure that we're all on the same page when it comes to this reopening plan that we're working on. Our guiding principles as we plan are the health and well-being of our students, our students, our faculty, our staff, and our coaches, and their families, all of our families that are part of the Derryfield family, and academics, on providing critical foundations of knowledge and skill, inspiring students, and heightened engagement. We also expect deep community connection and personalized education in whatever form a student is at Derryfield this year. So while our days will feel different, for sure, our values are going to remain the same. And this year, our core value of caring is really going to be lifted up. And we're going to live that value this year in the way that we live our daily lives. We're going to be a community in a really powerful way. The way that we live our lives and share our awareness about health is going to have ripples out to everyone who's in our community. And we'll talk about that tonight.
Yeah, great. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to kind of touch upon these notions of caring and compassion, because the two are really the driving forces behind kind of safety and health, especially where this virus is concerned. So I just want to offer up some ways that you Derryfield community members can be really helpful to us in helping us care for and keep the community safe. So in no particular order, I'm just going to kind of go through these different ways that you can show that you care and that you can kind of help us. So the first one is by avoiding non-essential travel. So particularly travel via means that place you in close confinement with people. So this is kind of the trains, planes, and automobiles clause. We really, kind of ask that you avoid travel that, takes place in vehicles that are very crowded, or areas that are very crowded, and also travel to areas that have rising COVID counts. If you do travel outside of New England or on public transportation anywhere, you can show you care by building in quarantine time. And we've actually built in quarantine time as a school from August 17th through the 31st to kind of allow for families to settle in and keep themselves safe leading up to the opening of school. So even in New England, we have to be really vigilant about local viral trends. So for example, while the number of COVID cases on the South Shore of Massachusetts is minuscule right now, the number on Nantucket has been rising due to visitors from out of state. So we ask kind of that you consider not risking exposure in a county that's having an upward trend. Families currently participating on travel sports teams, if you have students on travel sports teams, or if people are visiting kind of grandparents or other family in states outside of New England, or are engaged in any other form of travel, you will kind of need to return home and self-quarantine by August 17th. That's this Monday. And that's in order to start school as safely as we can on the first day of retreats on August 31st. Social distancing as much as possible when you do have to be around other people. And that kind of goes for travel teams, kind of playing on travel teams throughout the year as well. If you have a student that needs to participate in a travel team, it may also call for further quarantining and possible transitions to remote learning. So just keep that in mind when you're making your plans. You can contact the athletic director, Chris Hetler, if you're thinking about attending a recruiting tournament inside or outside of New Hampshire. You can also show that you care and demonstrate good judgment by steering clear of any events where large numbers of people are brought together, or even small numbers of people who are not kind of adhering to PPE guidelines, like wearing masks and sanitizing and social distancing 6 feet or more. We ask that you get flu shots this year to keep your children up to date on all immunizations. The last thing we need is an outbreak of the mumps or some other hideous virus that we don't want to see in conjunction with COVID. I cannot state enough how important being vigilant about overall health and nutrition and rest is going to be this year. So if you can pursue kind of vaccination for the seasonal flu in order to limit transmission of that illness, that is going to be very helpful to us. You can also show that you care, and we've had kind of discussions with the kids about this already in various forums, but by making an unwavering promise to wear masks in any public setting outside of Derryfield, and to wash your hands frequently, paying attention to the preventative hygiene measures set forth by the CDC. Also important, this is very important, we ask that families please complete daily wellness checks before school using the Magnus Health app. We're going to set up Zoom meetings to train you on this at some point. But we also ask that your child never comes to school sick. This is vital. If you forget to check your child in the morning, that will delay our morning check-in process, which will then adversely affect academic time in the classroom. And please note that all morning check-ins are going to be reimagined for social distancing this year. So we have various doors set up for kids to enter through, and various checkpoints to make sure that you have entered that health information. Please also do us a huge favor by responding to any calls, requests, or updates from Derryfield regarding the health of your student. It's really important to us that we communicate with you, but it's also important that you kind of keep that line of communication open with us, and respond in timely manners to requests for information. We are looking to create continuity between school and home, so consistency is key in reinforcing the efforts to promote healthy choices and proven practices to limit any potential COVID exposure. So just kind of keeping that homeschool balance between all of the things that we're trying to comply with. And, you know, don't be afraid to speak up within your circles of influence in and around your communities in support of these essential principles, knowing that the difference we can make and the importance that there is a difference that we can make, and that it's important to set the example in our region in this time of great need. One decision at a time, starting now, starting today. We really are trying to work hard to keep a bubble of health around Derryfield. We hear that term bubble a lot in these COVID times, but we're trying to keep our little bubble safe. So the fewer contacts that our community members can have with other people, especially contacts with big groups of people, the better. You can, and again, I'm just going to reiterate, you can also help Derryfield by responding to the email that went out asking whether or not your child will be on or off campus for learning this year. It was resent this week, and if you haven't given us that critical info yet, we really do need it. It's vital for our planning. So, and also remember that we did design in a family phase to allow you to travel and see family from Thanksgiving through January 1st, and then quarantining 2 weeks before returning to campus is also built into that. This family phase will involve full virtual learning, and also the holiday break in the middle there. So.
Great. Well, so let's take a moment and talk a little bit about the health protocols. What might families expect to see and why?
Okay, absolutely. So there will be pre-screening. So as I mentioned before, the first critical step in the process that is that parents fill out that Magnus report each morning. The pre-screening questions and the temperature taking all kind of need to be filled into that Magnus app every morning by 7:10 a.m. And again, if you forget, this is going to make an already involved drop-off process in the morning much more complicated and difficult for our staff. And it can also jeopardize your children getting to their academic blocks on time.
We're looking for smooth
Yep.
as we can. Smooth as we can.
Much as we can. So that's, you know, that's where this partnership comes into play here, between home and school. So there will be a non-compliance report that kind of flags any student who was not automatically approved to be in school. Maybe they answered a screening question with a yes. And also students who did not complete the daily screening questionnaire. No confidential information will be visible in this report. It will simply flag the kids that we need to kind of pull aside as they enter, as they come off the bus and are trying to enter school. So students, again, who do not complete that report in time will be separated from their peers, sent to a designated area outside to kind of wait and be screened by a designated screener. This you can see how if many people kind of forgot to enter their information, this would be a significant additional obstacle for kids to get into school each day. It's going to be a hassle for the students, and it's not going to make that process very efficient for the faculty and the designated screeners. Faculty and staff will also pre-screen themselves and report. We have a different reporting system, but we also have to take our temperatures and report in about any of the kind of symptomatic questions. And this whole pre-screening process is meant to protect the campus from symptomatic people, COVID-19 symptomatic people, as well as those sick with other ailments. So it's just really, we're trying our best, like I said, to kind of keep everybody healthy and well. And Mary, can I ask you, what is going to happen if a student develops symptoms during the school day?
Sure. So if a student becomes sick while they're at school, then the student's going to go to the nurse immediately, and the student will wait in a designated isolation room, and then where the nurse will assess the student. And if the nurse determines that the student doesn't have any actual known symptoms of COVID, then the student can return to class. If the student is symptomatic, then the student's going to wait in that designated isolation room until their parent or guardian comes to pick them up, and then they will follow that COVID-19 quarantine protocol. And there are lots of details on the landing page at www.derryfield.org about what that protocol is. But basically, testing should be done on any student who has symptoms to find out for sure what it is. And any person who's suspected or confirmed with COVID is going to be immediately reported to the New Hampshire Public Health Department, as is required by the state. And then our buildings and ground staff is going to do a deep clean of any rooms that that person was in, and also of the bus that that student or adult was in, if that's the case.
Great. And what if a person finds out that they have been in close contact with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19?
Well, if the student's at school when they learn that they were in close contact with an individual who tested positive for COVID-19, then the student will wait in that designated isolation room until a parent or guardian arrives to dismiss the student. If a faculty staff member is at school, when they learn they were in close contact with a person who tested tested positive, then they'll go home. And just to give you a sense of what does in close contact mean, it generally means within less than 6 feet from the person with COVID for 10 minutes or more over 48 hours. A student who's been in close contact is going to go home. They should be tested 4 or 5 days after their last exposure. It takes a little while for COVID symptoms to emerge and then be picked up by tests. And then they're going to stay home and self-quarantine per the CDC guidelines from the onset of symptoms. And then they have to be 1 day completely symptom-free and fever-free before they return to school. And that individuals who are asymptomatic close contacts can't test out of that 14-day quarantine. That's a requirement from the state as well. Reina, I wonder, could you talk to us a little bit about how the communication will work and handled kind of around confirmed cases and the community?
Sure. And I know, guys, we're throwing a lot of information at you. It's very specific. Yes. And I apologize if it seems like we're reading sometimes, but there's so much that we want you to know that we've confirmed about our processes and just how this is going to flow. So rather just have a natural conversation, but we also don't want to miss the nitty gritty of what you all want to know. So that's why, so excuse us if we are giving you a lot of information that's very important. So faculty, staff, parents and guardians of students who are identified as close contacts of an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19 will be notified individually by either a member, well, not either, definitely by the New Hampshire Public Health Department and possibly also Derryfield School. If a member of our community is diagnosed with a positive case of COVID-19 and that individual was at school within 48 hours of symptoms, the Derryfield School will notify our community by email. However, for confidentiality reasons, you can imagine, why, but we'll talk about it right now. It's really important that we're not identifying the name of the individual who has COVID-19, just like you see if you watch the news, how it says there are cases. If you were in this place, they're trying to protect the person who is sick, right, and for their privacy. So what we'll do is we'll, as much as possible, provide information that's general but helpful, right, such as what division the child is in, example, upper school, middle school, and when appropriate, we can also tell you what grade the person is that tested positive. The other side to that is that we really request that members of our community respect privacy of the individual who possibly has COVID-19. And we don't want it to turn into, rumors, gossip. We always dampen that type of thing down in our culture anyway. It's not helpful. And also because students may think that they have symptoms of COVID and turn out to be fine, or they may have allergies, common cold. This is something that maybe a lot of people are experiencing, I think, in terms of just anxiety, right? Or questions about, why do I feel sick today? Is it COVID? So that, I think that's normal to be a little anxious, but we don't want it to be a rumor mill about, oh my gosh, did you see so and so, cough in class today, that kind of thing. And they might find out as they're vetting all, their symptoms, they might find out it was something completely, they ate something bad that morning and made them feel sick to their stomach. So we really want to encourage our community to keep calm, right? Until we know what the data is that tells us we actually have a confirmed case. I want to be cautious if you think you have a case, but once we know we have a case, then we can follow the protocol from there. Now, when I met with student council, with Assistant Dean of Students here, Gill Roberts, we were just really impressed by how seriously students are taking this overall. I want to state that right now. We are very fortunate that we have really bright kids, really, concerned kids, caring kids, and they want to look out for one another. I got the real sense that they're being protective of themselves or being protective of their own families, because, there are individuals that have grandparents living with them, or it could be, another person in their family has an autoimmune condition, right? So there's all sorts of situations kids are very aware of. And so I'm proud of them. And if they're watching, I'm proud of you guys that you have been wonderful to work with. You're very understanding of how seriously we're going to take the protocols this year. And they're even saying, let's make sure we're consistent, we're fair. Students always look for fairness and what's logical, right? So once we train them on what's logical, then we need to see that sort of across the board. So I think student council and DC and the lead committee students that have been working with us so far, what we're going to do is we're going to have a protocol that we're going to put at the beginning of our handbook. And I think it's a great idea that we said, put it right in the front where everything is outlined. Here's what we're doing this year. And we're going to have a video. Student council wants to help make a video, which I think this is a great idea. And they lead the video and they say, these are the protocols. This is the way we walk down the hallway. This is the door that you come in if you're in 6th grade, 7th, all the way through 12th. So they're going to go through all of those protocols on a video. And the video will be shown during all of our retreats. So we're going to train them so they don't feel as anxious, know exactly what to do. Put the video on the website. Parents can see the video. They'll have access to it as well. So, the students understand you want to uphold high standards, but you also don't want to be confrontational, unnecessarily confrontational with another student in the community, because it's just not our culture to be like that. And, I'm a Spanish teacher at the school. I teach 8th grade and 9th grade Spanish. I mean, if someone were coughing in my class or sneezing, I wouldn't make fun of them. I wouldn't tease them. I also wouldn't allow other people to tease them. And I would not make a spectacle of it. Like, I wouldn't blow it up in front of the whole class. So it's just that having the culture of respect first and foremost, and caring, and just encouraging your kids, because some of them may be a little anxious about stuff. And, oh, I saw so-and-so on the team today, like the mask moved a little. I think student council, we're working through all of how to handle situations like that. And we'll come up with, who can I go to? I think one of the parents recently had a question of, are the students going to know who to go to if they're nervous? And I think we're going to make that really clear to them. I'm a resource, counselor's a resource, that way they can figure out, how do I handle this? What do I say to you? Let you also, Dean Stimpson, talk to that individual if it's a repeated issue. So, anyway, so that's all of this is being taken into consideration, but I want you to know that the students themselves are really play a critical role, along with, parents, obviously. So I was wondering too, if Gill, you can talk about how things are going to work during transportation, drop off, pickup, and buses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that's kind of a herky-jerky translation right there, but a transition. So I do want to talk about transportation, but you know, getting the kids buy-in is also super important. And you know, the more questions that we can answer, and I see some in the question and answer box, and we will get to those at the end. The more questions we can answer to kind of help put people's minds at ease, you know, the better we feel about it too. So.
Yeah, I just want to also add that we are going to be compassionate and respectful, but we also are going to have very little patience for not following those health guidelines. That's going to be the answer, and the students and disciplinary committee are working with the deans on this right now on what will be that swift, because when it comes to the health of everyone else, we just have to have a super high standard all the time.
Yeah. Everywhere. And that applies to transportation. So thank you for that segue. So really the safest way to get to school right now is in a family car with just your family members. The next safest way is actually going to be on buses, due to the fact that protocols are in place on buses, spacing is doable on buses more so than in a small automobile. And then carpools are actually kind of emerging, in our talks with Fusion Cell, carpools are emerging as one of the greatest exposure risks due to the close proximity and the shared air between people who haven't been quarantining together necessarily. So safest way in just a family vehicle with only your family members, next safest the buses, third safest or not as safe is carpools. So let's just
forgot walking. Walking is definitely the safest.
Walk. Yeah, you're right.
Riding a bike. Remember riding a bike?
Excellent. Clean and safe. Love it.
Yep. Obviously with a helmet and all that good stuff on your bicycle. You know, don't let those safety protocols slide.
Depending on where you live, of course, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So just to walk through some of the bus protocols, just so you are aware, all of the bus drivers will complete pre-screening questions and temperature checks like we all do, like the employees do. They will have to put on a Derryfield mask for the entirety of the ride. They will disinfect their vehicle using disinfectant sprayers. And they will also verify before taking off for the morning ride or the afternoon or whatever. They will verify that their supplies are stocked, and that includes hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes. All of the students riding on the bus must have a Derryfield mask on prior to entering the vehicle, and that will remain on for the entirety of the ride also.
Which all Derryfield kids will have masks supplied, in case people didn't hear that in previous chats.
Yes.
Sorry, that's very important.
5 3-ply or 3 fabric level masks that have a nice logo, and they're just delightful. All riders entering the bus will have to use hand sanitizer immediately upon entry. Kind of sanitizing when you get on the bus, and probably even when you are exiting the bus is a good idea too. All riders must sit in assigned seats. These are pre-spaced based on kind of the numbers we've received back of who is taking the bus, who's planning to take the bus every day. We've been able to pre-space the seats. The kids will be in every other seat. The seats will be staggered. So for example, somebody might be on the right side of one seat and the person behind him might be sitting on the left-hand side of the other seat. It will be one child only per seat with the exception of siblings. So if you have siblings riding the bus, they will definitely share a seat. That will be assigned. Any rider that's not feeling well, regardless of symptoms, this is kind of common, it's common, I don't know, reasoning, should not be using transportation, the Derryfield transportation option to travel to school. But really, if you're having symptoms and you're not feeling well, you shouldn't be coming to school at all. So,
right. Good rule of thumb in general, right?
Yeah, but definitely not on the bus. Because, and I was going to say this in a minute, but if any person on a bus tests positive for COVID, that entire bus is going to wind up being required to quarantine per Fusion Cell's instructions. So you really want to, you know, in talking about caring about other people, you want to be mindful that if you are not feeling well, you probably shouldn't try to infect the whole bus of kids. The vehicle windows will all be open to improve air circulation during travel and when standing idle. And that's going to go on even in colder months. So, you know, please bundle up. If you send your student with extra layers if they're going on the bus. And the buses will be cleaned deeply after the morning route, after the 2 afternoon routes, kind of in preparation for the next day. Every night they'll be cleaned. So I'm going to kind of turn it back to Mary, talk about some.
Thanks. So you can see that our decisions are really based on critical thinking and not on wishful thinking. And, you know, very consistent with the way that we teach students here to think critically, use science, use data to make decisions. And you can also see that from what's been shared tonight, what a high level of detail is behind our protocols that we've talked about, but many more that we are not even going to get to talk about. And we're able to distance kids on buses, somewhat, but distance kids 6 feet or more in classrooms, enforce masks wearing, and also have classrooms that have top-notch HEPA filters. The company's coming next week to do the entire campus. And we'll have air purifying machines in classrooms as well. And then we're so fortunate with our gorgeous acreage that our kids will have outside breaks throughout the day. So we're in a very incredibly fortunate position, and I just want us to kind of recognize that and have gratitude about that as we go forward.
I always love, Mary, how you say this is the year of like getting those fleece jackets out, right? Because we're going to have the windows open, we're going to have a lot of ventilation, we'll be outside as much as we can. So that's always a good way to think about it. And because this is a health crisis, we're going to need to really be stringent with our compliance and enforcement, reinforcement, training. So as I mentioned earlier, Assistant Dean Roberts and I are working really hard right now with the student leadership. We have a discipline committee, which is a wonderful committee of students who are elected, along with student council, who are all elected, and our wonderful school president, Ellie Small. And they're working really hard through their summer, which is impressive, right? It speaks a lot to how Derryfield kids take this so seriously, and they're volunteering to help with the preparation for the reopening. And so we're working on updating the handbook, as I mentioned earlier. We're coming up with incentives, we're coming up with protocols, we're coming up with consequences, you know. And so I think, you know, their comments really hit me because they're taking this so seriously, and they're tremendous student leaders. And they're actually getting a lot of experience going through this time. It's just, who could have predicted this, that they would have been student leaders during this year. So my hat's off to them, and they're taking this very seriously, as are we, of course. And so I just want to reinforce that, you know, students, parents, your students are wonderful, and they're really taking this seriously. And please take the time, parents, when the video is finalized, take the time to look at the student-led video that they're going to be putting on the website. Our wonderful marketing team, you'll see that on the landing page likely, and the video will be there, and you'll see that they'll go through all of the things that we're talking about, sort of a day in the life. I'm imagining that we might do. What happens when you get up? What happens, just like Jill Roberts just explained, what happens when you get on the bus? You know, reminder, make sure that the windows are open. Just sort of how can we all sort of look out for one another during the day? How can you make sure you're taking care of yourself and other people? So yeah, so I'm proud. Again, I guess I've said it a few times, but I'm proud to be a dean of students in a school that's like this, where the students are awesome, and we're all smart people, and we get it. You know, they get it. The student council gets it, and DC gets it about how we need to keep that caring, but we also have to have that really high standard. So more to come. You'll find out sort of how council feels and DC feels about coming up with fair and reasonable consequences, but really strict ones as well. So we're finding that balance there right now. So I think, Mary, it would be great if, you know, just there are a lot of questions student council had about sports and sports programming. And so if you could talk more about that, that would be great.
Absolutely. So, you know, Derryfield, we've talked about how to create a safe campus. And when it comes to sports, we definitely have that awareness. We are going to be offering after school on campus sport athletics through our typical teams that we have every year. And also other extracurriculars after school, where we've chosen to take that risk in addition to the school day because we think it's so important for kids. However, if you are a family that would like your child to come home at the end of the day, we've relaxed the athletic requirement so that a student may exercise at home and have a parent sign off on their hours of exercise and submit it for sports credit for the 2 seasons. So that's important to note, that we're giving a lot of sort of awareness of the different comfort levels that different families and individuals have. And while we're going to be offering our team sports, they will look very different this year. The coaches will work to design safe practices, and we won't be competing with other schools. The leadership team is unanimous in this policy for the fall, and we'll revisit this for the winter because, as we know, information and life is changing quickly. But we're not willing to mix our students with students from other schools whose health standards may not be up to Derryfield's. As I mentioned, you know, all these advantages we have, well, there are other schools that would love to have the option of keeping students 6 feet apart in classrooms. They just don't have the space to do it. And some schools may not be requiring masks or may not be as vigilant about enforcing mask rules. And they may not have the HVAC filtering and the air purifying that we're going to have. And so as a result, we're not willing to mix our students with other students at that time. Plus, we know that there's an exponential sort of exponential contact mixing by opening up to another community. We know how disappointing this is. It is so disappointing. As I've mentioned before, my own daughter lost her senior year college lacrosse season last spring. I understand what that feels like. The good news is that as compared to the spring, where it was just a complete shutdown and total loss, this year, the teams in the upper school are going to be meeting 4 days a week after school. You're going to still have that camaraderie and that friendship and that playing of your sport. And in the middle school, 3 days a week after school. We're going to start with skills and drills, and then we're going to consider scrimmaging amongst ourselves based on the information we have as it develops. So you may have a child who played on a summer sports team and think, why are we doing this? And feel like it went well. Well, I would posit that summer sports teams were a really different context. For the kids who were playing on those teams, they played their sport, and then they went home to a family cocoon that of sort of contact, of minimal contact with anybody else. This fall, by contrast, if a student's on an outside team, say a travel team, they're spending time at a school with hundreds of other people, and with all different standards of kind of health concern and hygiene, et cetera. In addition, we've observed teams renting our fields this summer, and based on what we've witnessed, we can see how hard it is for coaches who are coaching an actual full competitive game with an entire standard number of kids on a team competing, because behind them are the kids who aren't playing and are waiting to play, and it's very hard to keep for a coach to coach and keep those kids behind them socially distanced. And so, and then on top of it, transportation is problematic as well. At more bus time, it adds to a child's chance of exposure, and it increases our chances of getting COVID from each other within the community and from an opposing team that's all on a bus together coming to Derryfield. So we're really working to make our sports experience as safe as possible. So just to reiterate, we will have sports at school, grades 6 through 12. For the first time ever, sixth graders are going to be full team members of middle school teams.
Hey, they'll be so happy.
Graders, and my son would have loved that. But we just won't be playing other schools this fall at this time. That's our decision at this moment. We're going to turn now to some of the chat questions. And Reina, are you seeing any that we want to look at? Sorry, my screen's this way to look at. My camera.
That's okay. Yeah, I do see some really excellent questions. One of our parents is asking, when will we get Derryfield masks?
That is a great question. I believe they're going to be ready in time for retreats. But if they're not ready in time for retreats, they'll be ready for the first day of school, and we'll make sure that there's clear communication before.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that the head class advisors are also working really hard behind the scenes to plan retreats, right, that are safe, interactive with their advisors, that kind of thing. So we're going to do a check-in virtually the week before. So that will actually be helpful because we'll get the most up-to-date, we'll say hello, obviously. You'll learn who your advisor is by, your student checking their email. So the advisor will email the welcome, introductory type advisory meeting. And in that advisory meeting, the advisor will outline, here are some things that we're going to do during retreats. Here's what's going to happen. If the masks aren't ready, Mary, we can have the advisors say, bring your own 3-ply mask or go over it at that time.
So a question is, will you be confirming the temperature check before the kids get on the bus? And the answer to that is no, because the processing of those reports happens between kind of when everybody wakes up and when people come to campus. So that is an additional risk of getting on the bus. But again, we trust our community that people will not put kids who are symptomatic on a bus.
So Mary, I'm seeing repeats of this question. Will we require COVID testing before school starts in the fall for all students, teachers, and employees?
We will not be requiring that. The advice of our experts is that the high negative rate of COVID tests makes that not, unless somebody's already symptomatic, there's a very high negative rate. And so they're not that useful. They're not as useful as one would expect. So we will not.
I see another, sorry, I apologize. Go right ahead.
We're just having a lovely little round robin discussion here. If a student is sick, are we requiring that he or she gets a COVID test and reports the result to Derryfield? And then if positive, after a quarantine, will that student be required to retest and report those results to Derryfield?
So we are requiring that they get a COVID test and let us know what the results of the test are. And then after quarantine, they're not to come back until they are asymptomatic for a full day. And we are not requiring the student to retest and report those results to Derryfield. That can be problematic because once you're positive for COVID, you can actually be months later still positive for COVID as well. Even when you've
I have a question I see a few parents are about schedules, which is a really good question, is when our schedule, so for those that have not been to Derryfield before, sometimes kids can see often kids can see their schedule and information ahead of time. And so the question from the parents, Mary, is when will classes/schedules be released and posted on MSA?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. So we'll keep
find out.
We're sort of designing as we go, as we're designing spaces and reconfiguring them in all these new ways. It has had influence on delay, and we changed the schedule entirely. So that's had delay of schedules when you usually hear them.
Got it.
There's a question about, will families still have the flexible 5 bus rides per month option? So I think I'm gonna try to field this one, but if you want to help me out, that would be terrific. So I think we are not really going to offer kind of random rides as an option. It's really kind of, are you going to take the bus on a daily basis or are you not? Just so we can plan for the spacing on the bus. So I really don't think kind of those five ride passes or any monthly passes or daily passes are going to be offered.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a theme this year is committing
Right.
to something and staying with that, because what we're trying to do is not mix up cohorts of kids. So commit to the bus, commit, and also to make things clean and consistent. Commit to lunch, either purchased through celebrations or brought from home. Commit to after school study hall or not popping in and out. So that's kind of a theme this year that I hope you'll be understanding about. There are a number of questions that if Lindley Schutz were here, she would know the answer to.
Our academic guru.
When do advisor lists come out? And we'll get that to you. We'll try to
We're
answer
still
that.
working on it. It's almost there, guys. It's almost there, but we need to make sure we're doing this. And so, as Mary and Jill have both reiterated over and over again, there are things that we're doing to ensure safety. And I won't go into all the details, but it's just really being very thoughtful about who the advisor is that makes sense. In other words, if we could put a student with a teacher, wouldn't that make sense? Because that person's already in the cohort of the teacher. So even the 11th and 12th grade, a big shift was, and student council totally understood this, again, they're wonderful, that we sometimes mix grades like 11th and 12th, and this year, the guidance for Infusion Cell was not to do that. So we started with them together, and then can you imagine we had to take the 11th graders, put them with advisors, 12th graders decide who the 12th grade advisor is going to be. So these, we've been working at this for a bit. We're getting really, really close. And so bear with us, you will get an email from your advisor, and the advisor will say, I'm your advisor, and let's have an introductory meeting the week before retreats. And it's just a brief meeting, but that's when they're going to find out. So students, if you can tell your students be checking their Derryfield email, the week before retreats, they will get that information.
And Reina, we do have some questions about retreats, especially for the remote learning students. Are they required to go to retreats? Is it an option? I'm believing that we are going to kind of run our retreats the way we would run our classrooms, where we do have kind of a camera on us for the retreat so that the remote kids can participate. But are they required?
Absolutely. Oh, it's not just that it's a requirement. I just feel that helping to coordinate some of this with Ms. Roberts, I really feel it's important for the kids that are remote to feel integrated right into the community and to know who their advisor is and to feel part of the retreat, because during the retreat, you're going to get so much information. It's very valuable. So what we'll do is, again, so the advisor will email the students, all remote, it doesn't matter. Whoever's in that advisory with that advisor, right? And sometimes you'll have two advisors that kind of help coordinate things. You'll get that email, remote or not, and then you'll find out, okay, we're meeting at this time. Remote kids will be zoomed in, and it'll be great. We'll integrate everyone together.
So I've got a couple of questions that have to do with kind of committing to something for the full trimester, whether
it's a good question,
or a sport or sports on campus or virtual learning or not. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do is not have kids switching back and forth. But if somebody feels like they either no longer feel comfortable and want to permanently switch for the rest of the trimester, or they suddenly feel very comfortable and want to permanently switch for the rest of trimester, we can make that work. We just can't go back and forth, if that makes sense, because Derryfield, we want to wrap our hands around every student. We don't want anyone falling between the cracks. And so it's really important that we know where people are and are really on it. Another parent asked, could we really walk through what happens if there's a confirmed COVID case? And I could, this is one of those things, I don't know about you, but when I go to the vet, this happened today at our house, where somebody took the dog to the vet and was so overwhelmed by how the dog was feeling and how emotional she felt in there with the dog that she didn't hear anything the doctor said. And I think that happens to all of us when it comes to these kinds of COVID conversations. So I'm going to just repeat again, I'll read so it's pretty clear. If there's a confirmed COVID case, then the tracing is going to happen to prevent the spread of infection, as we'd hope. So the health department, the local health department, is going to conduct a detailed investigation to identify the people who may have been in close contact with a student or a staff member diagnosed with COVID-19 during their infectious period. And the school will assist the investigators in doing that, of course. And the investigators are going to seek to identify close contacts that's starting the 2 days before the person became symptomatic or before they tested positive if they're asymptomatic. So close contact, for the purposes of a public health investigation in New Hampshire, is defined as a person who's within 6 feet of the individual diagnosed with COVID-19 during their infectious period for 10 minutes or longer over a 48-hour period. I know that's kind of confusing, but it could be like 5 minutes today, 5 minutes tomorrow, within the 6 feet. Now we're designing our classrooms, and so kids are at least 6 feet apart, but so that shouldn't happen all the time. But depending, the CDC guidelines are actually give discretion to the investigator, and so on a case-by-case basis, they may choose to draw larger groups into quarantine. So, for example, depending on the circumstances, the quarantine might only involve the sick child and one other child because of who was near them. But then, depending on other things, it could include a whole class. So, for example, if a kid was sick and coughing everywhere in a loud voice, or it was a place where CDC, or rather the health department, didn't feel confident about the HVAC system, then they may scoop up more people who are outside of 6 feet. So that's really assessed on a case-by-case basis. But we feel pretty confident that because we have such highly structured guidelines in place, that we're doing this to prevent too many people having to quarantine at the same time.
Right.
So that's where we are.
So Reina and I just tried
yes.
to type answers to some of the questions in the chat box,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if the chat box just goes to the panelists. So I'm not sure.
So let's say them out loud too, because that would benefit everybody.
Yeah, so the first one, oh, it does. Okay, thank you. Thank you. She said it does go to, the answers do go.
Okay.
That's good. All right.
Yeah,
Learning every day.
Perfect.
I see a really good question about two good questions about sports that we need to review. One is,
Oh, they can't see our chat.
Oh, whoops.
Sorry.
that's okay. We'll figure it out eventually,
we'll go
right?
back in a minute. Thank you.
Oh, this is going. But so we're talking about sports. So sports, this is my takeaway from all the meetings that we've had with also AD Chris Hetler, is this year, yes, there is still that sports requirement, right, of the 2 seasons. But what I like about our approach is we can individuate it. So if the family is uncomfortable for any reason, they could develop, I think it was one of the parents calling it like a independent sport, right? If you think of it that way, doing yoga, and that may not be a bad idea for some of our kids, right, who might be more on the anxious side. Yoga, or if they have a running program, and we're going to work with you guys. We're going to make it work so that students getting exercise, which we know is extremely important, going outside, getting some fresh air, all of those things that are highly recommended during this time, and giving them credit for it. So, athletic director Chris Hetler would be wonderful to chat with if you're running through ideas, different ideas for athletic credit. So you can contact him, email him, and he's happy to work that through. The other sports related question was, when do sports start? Which is a great question. We are not having preseason as we've done in the past, right? So August days where you go, limping to school, like, oh, I got to go to preseason double sessions. When I was in high school, they called it. We're not doing that. Okay, that's what the self-quarantine is really important before retreats, because we're trying to get everyone to go kind of, home, visit with family before you have to go back to school, no sports, you're home and you're safe in doing social distancing as much as possible. Sports will begin when school begins, after school begins. So right now, really to help your kids focus on what's first. First is sort of finding out who their advisor is. Second is the last week in the first week of September. And soon, parents, you're going to be getting more info about your child's retreat, which I think I saw a question about as well. So the logic and the reasoning behind the way we've designed retreats is you're going to have one middle school retreat going on in the middle school area and one going on in the upper school area. That's it. So we have like a 6 and a 9, and they're spread apart, and they get to look at the campus and feel comfortable and walk around, go over the protocols, find out who their advisor space is going to be, zoom in the kids that are going to be remote. Everyone gets to know one another in a safe way, in an advisory, and then getting comfortable on campus. Then the next group will come in, 7 and 11. So it'll go like that for the first week. And then the second week, we're also going to stagger too, so that kids, again, are getting to, now we're in school, and how's that going to be? And so they're going to go through their day already knowing if they're on campus, which way, I'm supposed to go, where's my classroom? We're going to practice all of that. And I believe one of the parents was saying, are they going to know their schedules? Yes, we're going to go over their schedules before the first day of school for them, for their grade. So they know exactly where their classes are. We're going to practice all of that. And so there'll be no questions, like I said, no heightened anxiety. I mean, everyone has a little trepidation, they're a little worried, but we want to make sure they know where their classes are. They know how to get there, right? They know how to be careful with their masks on in the hallway during passing time, and how to use the bathrooms. We're going to go over all of that stuff during retreats. So
it's important. Keep everybody calm.
So sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Interrupting McGee. Sorry, I just saw a question about the Bright Arrow app that was mentioned in Nuts and Bolts. And the Bright Arrow app is an app that you actually don't need to download it. It's an app that the school uses to send out kind of text blast or email blasts or kind of emergent messages. So we've used it in the past for calling snow days. Early in the morning and get a text instead of,
very helpful, guys. Very helpful.
Yes. We've used it before if we've needed to close school because a blizzard was on the horizon or something like that. And we may very well use it as a way of sending reminders to wear your masks and do your temperature checks and things like that. So you do not need to download the app. It's actually, the app is populated by all of the info, the contact info that you put into your contact card on the website, on MSA, our website. So when you enter that information, it populates the app, and then the app will send out text to whatever numbers you've kind of designated that you want text on. So you don't need to download that app. You just need to put your info onto your contact card on MSA, and then I will send you nice messages from that app.
So a number of questions that are appearing have to do with student flow, we call it, student movement, arriving at school, moving around, study hall after school. And our next fire pit chat will actually be about student flow, about campus updates, sort of on all the redesign and what's happening here, because there've been actually really wonderful renovations that are not just meant for COVID, as well as some that are specifically designed for the year for COVID, and also updates on parent traffic and where do you drive and all of that kind of thing. That'll be the next time. And then we'll have a future fire pit chat that will be providing mental health information for families and insight into Derryfield's mental health plan, which is fundamentally going to be, or at its root, it's going to be about how do you create positive way of looking at the world, positive frames, and looking at sort of walking into and managing fear with courage and with gratitude and an outlook that's based in fact and reality. But we'll talk about our support and when to know when there are times to get extra support as well. I want to remind you also, this landing page is just the magical compendium of all things reopening. And so many of the questions that you're asking are in that, on that www.derryfield.org first page site. Look for reopening as well. There are a couple minutes more, and I do want to just add, there's a question here: will classes be mixed within grades, such as math and science classes? And that's true in the upper school. In the middle school, the cohorts are quite contained. That was something that Mark's been able to do. We looked into it for upper, but it was too restrictive academically for upper school. Another question about the percentage difference for students online versus
I noticed that.
This was really surprising to us and is quite different at a lot of other schools, but we actually have the vast majority of students are going to be on campus. So that was
as well as faculty and staff.
As well as faculty and staff.
Yes.
That was a bit of a surprise to us. Let's see, is there anything else that doesn't fall into the topics that I just said would be covered, Reina? Do you, or
peeking here? I'm peeking.
Lockers are not going to be used this year.
No lockers.
Yeah.
And
if anything, just the outside of the locker to decorate. We have different ideas. I know it sounds funny, but you know, we have different ideas about how kids can see. This is actually a real thing, how kids can see who they really like, what their faces really look like, especially for a new person, you know, to walk around and not know who is who. So we are working right now, just so everyone knows, on a plan to take pictures during retreats, or even have students choose a picture they want to be on a lanyard. So it's an identification thing. And that will have those too, right? So they'll know what we look like and who we really are. And then we'll have some pictures on the walls of people and say, this is the 9th grade, this is the 6th grade. So we can get some cheeriness, right, into the hallways. And but lockers, no. So what they'll do is they'll have their books with them that they need for the day. And remember, they don't have all their classes every day, right? There's an odd day and an even day. So either, you know, 4 one day or 3 the next, or 2. School photos, we're not going to worry about until later. I see that question. It's a good question. But the pictures, yes, I know. I see one of the parents saying, I love that idea. If anyone's ever been to Breakthrough in our school, it's so cheery because you walk down the hallways and it's like, yes, we're in school. You know, they decorate, they do such a good job. So, and actually, I can't take all the credit. Ellie Small, thank you to Ellie Small, she's watching, because she said, like, I want to do psych notes. I want to do what, like, you know, we do as captains of teams, and we like take our notes and we pop, you know, we put them different places. So we're working on it. We're gonna try some cheeriness, and I'm gonna have student council really lead on that this year.
Great. There's a question about sports gear, and just we'll let you know on, you know, if you have a big giant bag. But because we are also relaxing the dress code this year, the idea would be that you can wear, if you would like to, sports gear through the day to school. That's appropriate as well.
That's huge, because that was a huge discovery that we made. Not discovery, but realization, that's a good way to put it, is the one thing that you really need to have on your body this year is your mask. And I really want students to focus on that, right? Because that's the goal, safety and caring. So that, and also like the one thing that we're all pretty unified against is no, you know, belittling language, racist language, nothing that would offend anybody, drugs, alcohol, nothing like that. Beyond that, we're going to be just focusing on the masks. Student council was so happy about that, and they said, yes, that's like a huge incentive. And if you can wear as much gear on you as possible, then wear it, you know, and then plus you're showing off Derryfield gear. That's always great.
I may be wearing Derryfield gear much of the time. We'll have to see. If I'm going to be outdoors this much, that may be happening.
Someone's asking about school pictures on the first day of school.
Yeah, so I'm saying that we're not
there yet. We do not. We that one we're not on that quite yet.
Not worried about that.
We have to wrap up.
Oh,
and,
yep.
Because there's actually another Derryfield Zoom call following us on this channel.
Oh, awesome.
I want to thank our community. I want to thank Reina and Gill so much.
Of course.
For me tonight. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody who's listening, and just, we can feel, and we love, you know, the expressions that you've given us even in the chat tonight. We can feel your support as we figure this out. And I just want to shout out to our phenomenal leadership team and board of trustees, who's just with us in our planning. So everyone be well. Hope to see you in future fire pit chats, and have
Hey
a wonderful
guys,
weekend. Bye
keep
bye.
those questions coming. Email us.